I gotta get the glowing box to go live. There we go. Hey, look, there we go. We're going live. And as always, it always asks me whether or not I want to leave. Love it. Love it. I started live. So, hey, YouTube land, welcome. The MCC Virtual Business Box Lunch, January 21st of 2022. I am your host, the Savage at Business. Well, today, a 1% business needs a 1% attitude instead. And as always, there's my brother from another mother. Mr. Matt Houston is rocking one of our other shirts. I believe he's rocking Savage in Business today. Oh, yeah, baby. And there's my other brother, the inestimable Jason Cordopat from Kite Electric, Legacy. It's the man's got this lovely little empire, and other people will be coming and joining us here very, very shortly. But let's get to it. The Virtual Business Box Lunch serves one purpose, and it's not just to hear the sound of our own voices on the internet, but it's to actually provide education, information, insight, and to make you smarter, better, faster at your job of running and owning a business. We talk about the week that was in business. We talk about what's going on, what's happening from a local, regional, national, and international standpoint, and the things that are going to affect you as a small, medium, large, or heck, could be an international sized business. I'm just doing some button pushing while I'm talking as well. But I'm doing the button pushing so everybody in YouTube land and in the future, should you see this, once the robot overlords take over, all hail our robot overlords, you're going to learn something and it'll make you better at doing your job, which is running a business. I'm going to add a tidbit from today. It's things that we talked about 6 months ago. It's things we talked about 9 months ago. It's things we talked about 3 months ago and comes back around cyclically. We talked about it actually just the beginning of December. We're going to reset it today. One simple reason. More people statistically in the last 12 months have started and incorporated a brand new business than we've seen in the previous 4 years. 4 years combined. More people are trying to do it themselves right now. And the consequence of failure is even higher. Money's tighter. There's less food. Credit's getting shittier and shittier to get your hands on all the time. It gets more expensive to borrow money. And if you've got your latest utility bill and you had Christmas lights on in December, let me tell you, that's a shock to the system as well. Which is maybe why we need Jason and solar on all of our houses instead of paying the man for the system, pay ourselves for it instead. But that means that people are coming into a very different world. There's an awful lot of disruption in the market. So today's topics for the three of us and whoever else comes and joins us here shortly, we're going to talk disruption. The last 90 days, what was, and this is our first topic for the day, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a moment, but I want it to percolate, to stew, for them to think about it for a second before we dive right in. So I'll give them the subject first, and then I'll let them talk about themselves and do a little bit of glossing while I finish the button pushing. What has been one of the biggest disruptions we've seen in the last 90 days? And what is one of those disruptions from the past year that is the brand new normal? Now, some disruptions come in the force of, let's say, supply chain issues. There's less variety on the shelf in a grocery store, as an example. Why should that be? Why should that be? And if you're in North America, and if you're in a direct major metropolitan area, this is a minor inconvenience that actually has a very short shelf life, or should. Why? The variety of producers, manufacturers, and the amount of farmland that we have. Not to mention the secondary and tertiary markets that come in the form of specialized goods, treats, candy, junk food, potato chip companies, other things like that, means that supply chain disruption only lasts so long. So things like leaner shelves at the grocery store in the environment and world we live in right now actually isn't going to last that long. It's a little scary to look at a grocery store and go, where the hell is everything? But it means that is very likely not a permanent thing. However, something has occurred in the last 90, 180, 365 days that is the brand new normal. So we want to talk about what one of those big disruptions are, because it's something that affects us personally, affects us mentally, it affects our pocketbook. And of course, it can have an effect on business. So that's the topic we're going to tackle to start with. And from there, while I finish button pushing, Matt, Jay, go ahead and introduce yourselves. I'm going to do some of the technical crap on the back end, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, for sure, Jay. I'll go first if that's all right. Matt Houston. I've been working with Mitch for what seems like forever, because it's been over 1 full year, and I'm grateful and fortunate because of it. One of the things that we're going to bring up today is that change management, change leadership, and the very uncertain times that we still continue to live in. So, our phrase is simply be the broker of certainty in these uncertain times. And we bring just a little bit more stability and clarity to small, medium-sized business owners by, asking the hard questions, but then being able to provide some of those hard answers too. allowing them to just focus on their new playing field, whichever that may look like, right? So I look forward to today for sure. And thanks very much, Mitch. Jason?
Hey, thanks, Matt. Name's Jason Quarterpad, owner of Kite Electric, residential commercial electrical contractors, focusing on sustainable energy and solar energy systems. I've been working with Mitch for just about 2 years now, year and a half at least, solid, instrumental, and definitely broker of certainty. I can tell you that much. Now, in terms of that question you're talking about, recent disruptions, one of the big disruptions we're seeing in the electrical industry is, of course, material pricing, material availability, right? The norm has now become that somewhere like the Home Depot doesn't stock breakers, or won't stock a lot of breakers. Material suppliers are looking at 6-month order dates, right? They'll push POs out and we might get the order in 6 months. And so small little upgrades, little extra circuits in your basement, electric vehicle charging stations, hot tubs are getting harder and harder to install. And it's becoming the norm to have to wait 3 to 4 months for this work to get done. And it's probably going to cost twice as much, right? Copper and just the hard commodity pricing is absolutely ludicrous. It's changing day by day, where, I think one of the long-term norms I think we're going to see is we're not going to see 30-day terms on supplier quotes anymore. 15 days might be the longest that they're willing to do. We've got 1-day supplier terms on quotes at the moment. If we don't buy the material today, it's a different price tomorrow, and that's just the way things are going. So in the trade economy, that's quite a bit of disruption in the material supply chain.
Mm-hmm. That's a hell of a topic. It's something we just finished having a conversation on. Paul, good to see you as always, brother. Why don't you introduce yourself real quick? And we're talking disruption. We're talking disruption, something that's occurred in the last 90 days that's only a temporary situation. An example I cited right away was the average grocery store that we've got in North America, the first world. It seems kind of scary to see how they're so lean, but actually with so much manufacturing, so much food production, and so many farms, it's actually a temporary more than anything else, because so much of that production will start to catch up. Price may not go back to normal. However, there are some things that have changed in the last 90, 180, 365 that are going to be the permanent new way of things. And that's what we're starting that topic on. So go ahead and introduce yourself and let's dive right into that topic.
Yeah, I'm Paul Flakowski, broker of certainty, business coach along with these two gentlemen here, Matt and Mitch, part of the MCC coaching group. And disruption, we're seeing quite a bit of it. An interesting one is the trucking. So that's the bottleneck. We do have the food, we do have everything there. But it's a bottleneck at the moment with government regulations. Speaking to actually one of the grocery store owners, he's expecting disruption for 3 to 6 months. He's not expecting empty shelves, but he's expecting lean supply out for a week. It's back in, that sort of disruption. There will be disruption with Kellogg's because they're on strike. So we're starting to see that level up as well within the economy, where, people have been pushed. Healthcare comes to mind. In the future here, I would expect a healthcare strike if governments and states and municipalities or states and provinces don't put some more money towards that. And then the interesting thing is China and how they're going after the rare earth metal sector, which they've been doing for quite some time. News headlines in Canada, of course, is lithium mining, and how the government hasn't done anything and allowed this acquisition to go through. So I think we've got several fronts on that side, but again, crisis breeds opportunity. So, we are seeing a larger expansion in, local foods, greenhouses that are massively expanding in the central Alberta area, providing that. One particular group wants to provide right off the hop all of the peppers, green, red, yellow, orange peppers for all of Alberta. And then they're going to be expanding tomatoes and things like that. So, eventually we're not going to see the amount of a lessening of the carbon footprint from, importing things from South America and Central America, or even California.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And for me, I think we've somewhat chatted about this in the past, but, the availability or open hours from our retail partners, obviously I focus quite a bit into the food and beverage sector, and what I've seen from many of the partners in January is that, hey, everybody, you know what? and it's posted on Instagram or their social sites, we're not open today due to staffing shortages. We're, delivery or takeout, or you go to, those third-party providers. But I think we're going to become very fluid with those sectors, just simply based off of the lack of trained staff. And you may see that 7-day-a-week establishment go to 6, maybe even 5. And yes, of course, being able to offer the food through, again, a takeout or delivery, but not for a dine-in. And that's something that I think is going to be that new norm, simply because, like I chatted with my 2 daughters, although young right now, what's their first job going to look like? Like we've chatted about this here months ago. I don't believe that my 11-year-old will go to McDonald's for her first job in 4 to 5 years. I think there's going to be so much automation from those large international companies that it won't be available. So now it's going to be about what sector, what industry do you find, the 16-year-old's going to cut their teeth in their entrepreneurial journey too, right? So I'm curious to see how that works with some of my partners out there and with the industry as a whole.
And I guess, can I springboard off that? And when you're talking about disrupting the way restaurants have been done, right? I've been noticing a huge uptick in quick service restaurants, jumping on multiple delivery platforms, 4 or 5 different delivery platforms at a time, seeing not only a 30% increase last year, but a 30% increase this year over last year, right? So there's a whole lot of, I want to sit around and get this food delivered to me because I've been working at home now for 2.5 years and there's no sign of me coming back. Right?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm smirking because we've internally chatted and we have some things on the go to revolutionize the way that food and beverage works, right? Because there's just so much from a brick and mortar standpoint that has adjusted forever. And we've created habits for ourselves where I've, again, mentioned in the past, I click and order my groceries. Do I support local? Absolutely. Do I get meal prep done? Absolutely. But then every once in a while, if I need to go to one of the big box stores, I still click it and I show up on my drive-by and it takes less than 5 minutes. That's changed forever for me. And I think for a lot of people, because I have to tell you, those spots in those big box stores and the groceries outlets are typically pretty full from the click and order or the drive-throughs, right? So that I think is something that we're going to see happen more frequently with the, baby boomers and younger, not necessarily with the boomers themselves.
To catch everybody else that's on here right now, we're talking disruption. It's a topic that's come up before in the past. We talked about it at the beginning of December. We've talked about it every quarter since we started the virtual business box lunch. And by the way, we are in season 2 officially of this one. We had 26 episodes in the first season. What? 26 hours of us blabbling about business nonstop for 6 solid months is fantastic. But we're talking disruption. And disruption in the marketplace comes in 2 flavors right now. And this is what I want to hear your opinion on. One, something that's happened in the last quarter, in the last 90 days, 120, 150, 180 days, that is only temporary. And we talked about supply chain issues with, let's say, major retailers or grocers, as an example. We have too much food production, too many food manufacturers, et cetera, for this to last long term. However, there are disruptions that came about in the last year that are going to be permanent, meaning that something changed from the way it used to be to the way it's moving right now. We want to hear opinions on that. And then, surprise, surprise, how do we deal with it? How do we fix it? Or how do we mitigate ourselves? Matt talks an awful lot actually about the simplicity that goes into managing his lifestyle. So that's personal, but that's also professional. Click and collect is massive. Ordering food service, Jason just brought that up as well. This makes it much easier. I've got both of my girls home today as we're broadcasting this live right now. I'm in command central in my office cul-de-sac in the basement. I can hear them both upstairs doing their thing. Guess what? Lunch got delivered to the door an hour and a half ago. Food arrived at the door and somebody got out of their toasty warm car and handed it to me in my doorway, and I put it on the table and they devoured it. So I didn't even have to leave the house. I walked 30 feet and food came. That's pretty cool. Yulia, Scott, Danny, Shannon, thoughts? Disruption, what's happened, what's going to stick?
I think, from an entertainment standpoint, a lot has changed as well. When you follow your local sports team and you see them, failing as ours has recently, but then you can almost correlate that with the lack of fans in the stands. it's interesting to watch that, you know, and I'm not sure how that'll change or how it'll be mitigated. You know, it seems like they have plans to put people back in, you know, and you know, keep selling the pop and the beer and the popcorn and all the things and the jerseys and stuff, which is, you know, huge for their revenue. But coming in and out of it, it seems like they're not ever truly prepared for what it is. But then there's like the psychological part on like the fans and the players and all this. And I don't know the solution for it, because that's a greater thing out of my hands. But I've watched this happen where, you know, you see just the participation of the group and the people when they're in the stadium versus the attitude of the players when the room is empty. And you can see that like a lot of guys struggle with not getting fired up. And I guess we could relate that back to our lives where, like, you know, we don't get those in-person business meetings anymore. And you do back-to-back Zoom calls every single hour on the hour all day long. And you never get that, you know, the atmosphere that, you know, I know Matt knows what I'm talking about when you know, you go and you have, you know, a drink in the pub and you just talk like human beings, and that disconnect is gone. I hope we get some of that back in the future. And it seems like to some degree things are going to curve out at some point. So I hope that's still prevalent, but we definitely need to adjust to Zoom being an all the time, every time. It's always going to be the backup plan for everything moving forward, or even the first plan, you know, if that just, you can't make that meeting work. And yeah, you know, I think it's just going to take some adjusting to, but, you know, try to stay optimistic about things, and I hope we can go watch hockey games again at one point.
Yulia, Shannon, thoughts?
I would say, to me, it looks like technology is going to already overtaken, but even more probably. So, and as you're saying, like, yeah, if there's going to be those jobs available later for kids, like at McDonald's, probably less likely. So when I was growing up, you know, you watch those movies, sci-fi movies, that robots gonna take over the planet, and eventually it is where it's heading. So if we want it or not, and yeah, if touching upon those events, live events, after 2 years, people got so comfortable in their basements, living rooms, in front of big screens, and yeah, doing everything from home. Why the human beings, like, we're getting more and more lazier, right? So, and in the result of that, all the technologies, that's what I said, it's gonna eventually happen. So unfortunately, but that's what I see what's happening. So at this moment, and hopefully that's not correct. I don't want this to happen, but yeah, see how it is.
Skynet.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a couple of perspectives on it. Number one, I agree with you 100%, Scott. Being a promoter, that was pre-COVID, because obviously there's been nothing to promote really when it comes to live entertainment and that for the last couple of years. But we tried to do everything we could to keep some of these recording artists and that afloat. We would do Zoom concerts and everything like that. It's so different when they can't actually hear the people applauding for them. They don't know, like, did that song really hit? Did it not? Should I really put the money and effort into? Because a lot of times when they do those performances, the feedback they get from the audience helps to determine what that next album is going to look like or whatever. And and then so that's just been really, really difficult. I actually shut down my event company and promotions company. I'm just waiting to see when it's actually going to be viable again, because even though we can still have some people performing in certain circumstances, and that it's not the same. And it's just, I would be money out of pocket, you know, to be promoting the shows right now. It just doesn't make sense. So most of the entertainers right now are having to do everything themselves because nobody wants to take it on, because you can't even go like take a percentage at the door, because who's coming to the door, right? The other perspective that I have is from a corporate perspective, and the major disruption that I've seen over the last year or so is the work from home. And I'm hearing all of these corporations now going, oh, we can't wait to get people back in the office. And I'm just asking them, why? why do you want them back in the office? It seems to me to be selfish and controlling for corporations. They're going, if they want to retain their staff, they're going to have to start offering options. Statistics are showing that more people are preferring to work from home. They're less stressed. They're actually more productive and producing more quality work. They're not missing their deadlines, even if they take little Johnny to the dentist or whatever, like, and not have to beg permission to take that time to do it. And I think that's part of what makes them happier. And I think corporations, this is the one thing that's going to stay. And until the big corporations and larger businesses and that get on board with the fact that there's just some people that are actually going to do better things for your company if you give them the freedom to work in an environment where they're more productive and where they're happier, even if that means working from home. As long as they're producing and as long as the work is quality and as long as they're meeting their deadlines and that, what do you care where they're working from? So I think that's one of the major disruptions that a lot of the larger corporations especially are going to have a lot of problems understanding and meeting in the new workforce.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to cite a couple of things, and then we're going to go to the next, call it avenue or next topic. Now, I'm going to precede this ahead of time, give everybody a chance to think about it, offer some thoughts. One, what's an industry that's remained, or business that's remained stubbornly obstinate in favor of what is a clear mandate to step your game up, right? We talk about disruption. And what's one that went all in? I want this to be a learning tool, an opportunity for people to go, hey, you know what, that makes sense. Now, when we talk about jobs for a moment and what our children might be looking at, let's call a spade a spade. I'm personally invested in a robotics company that tethers AI and robotics together to flip burgers and run fry baskets. Your kid ain't going to be working at McDonald's because the robots are coming for those jobs. Your kids could be working customer service, the front desk, but they aren't going to be making burgers anymore because the robots are coming for that job too, right? I watched a video the other day from the wonderful and energetic Grant Cardone. We're still coming for you, Grant. But from the great Grant Cardone, where the video he posted was him sitting down with his teenage daughter, teaching her how to make sales calls. And I shared that link with Matt and Paul. He has got her working the phone, calling people because he's got a live event coming up in March. And this video was recent, like within the last couple of days. He's got her making sales calls to people that are previous attendees and cold sales calls, teaching her how to engage and interact with people one-to-one. Hey, you did good, try this next, et cetera, et cetera. Literally teaching her how to sell. So there are certain skills and talents that we have to look for as we're moving forward too, right? And lastly, now it doesn't matter what symbol you got at the back for a moment, but who's got one of these, right? When we go to entertainment for a moment, we watched the first direct-to-home videos, and no, not the shitty videos, but the first direct-to-home blockbuster videos happened in the last 6 months. Black Widow being one of them. There was a hybrid. They released it in theaters and sent it home for you to buy. Every movie is coming faster and faster right now. In fact, Christmas releases are coming out here in February for home video. But the Blu-ray version of it doesn't come out for a month later. Music. How many major artists, I'm going to cite one as well, Taylor Swift as an example, other than just doing her own rework, launched 2 albums in the middle of the pandemic. We're at 21 months of the pandemic. Launched 2 albums and relaunched 2 others to redo her own work. So one of the biggest music artists on the planet, whether you like her or not, has cut 4 albums in less than 2 years. That's unheard of. That's not a pace that most musicians work at because she doesn't have a touring schedule. She's not live on stage. So what does she do? She's back in the recording studio, cutting new content. So it is starting to come for us in ways that we didn't think of. Now, streaming music services as well. When we talk entertainment, one thing that I was really surprised at, I've been to a number of virtual live concerts online in the past year. For some reason, people seem to be really obstinate about doing it. But one of my favorite artists on the planet in North America does not have that big of a following, has a very large following in Europe and Japan as examples, right? I'm big in Japan. He literally owns that shirt and I love him for it, right? He had a far bigger crowd live online than I have seen at any other time going live to watch him perform in the past 15 years. And I've been following this guy around everywhere. So what does it take for certain entertainment or certain industries that are being a little bit obstinate? So that's the precursor into that. Who needs to wake up and get their shit wired? Who's doing a really good job? Because there's lessons to be learned from there. Who's up?
I think the entertainment industry has definitely learned where pre-COVID, everybody seemed to be on Netflix, and now everybody has their own streaming service. And like, I don't know, from a consumer standpoint, that kind of sucks because now you got to buy like all these different streaming services. But I think you're completely right where, they have their own brands and their own characters, and they see the opportunities to, develop these characters, and they don't want to share them with another media source. So each one of them now has developed their own streaming service, and that I think has changed forever. Good or bad, I think that's changed forever. So yeah, that's something that I see as a future. Like we recently bought a management software for our streaming services, just so you could go to that one site and watch all your streaming services at once rather than logging into different streaming services. So I see that being something on the horizon that becomes a thing, because of course everybody's got to have their TV guide, right? So need this thing that's going to manage all your streaming services that you pay for. So it's interesting, right?
Shan, go ahead.
Sorry, I got my assistant over here. I'm like, ooh, I just remembered my Zoom etiquette. Woohoo! Anyway, it only took 2 years, right? I was just wanted to further on to Scott's point too. It's really funny too with the streaming services, how Netflix in the beginning was the disruptor, and they were the ones, they were winning big everywhere they went. And now all of a sudden, with the switch to having more competition, I work in the financial markets. I have a huge client in the financial markets. So I just was reading a story yesterday about how Netflix is tanking. Their stock is tanking because they were great when they were basically a monopoly, but now that they have to face this competition, they're not doing well. They're not managing well. And as per usual, Disney's the one that's coming out on top. Right. So there's so many lessons to be learned from Disney Corporation. Apparently, somehow they always wind up on top. But yeah, it's funny how Netflix started off as that disruptor and now is losing stock value as well as viewers by the day right now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another example of that, the Netflix idea in entertainment is kind of within Matt's realm of things, is in restaurants and delivery services. Skip the Dishes, right? Skip the Dishes was this little startup that kind of came to town here in well before the pandemic, but then just exploded once delivery started happening, and then came Uber Eats and DoorDash and a couple others, right? And it's interesting to see how they're kind of setting the pace and who's trying to diversify that. Like we were saying earlier, that's going to kind of become a new normal. But it'll be interesting to see if companies like Netflix or like Skip the Dishes, if they're going to continue to innovate, or if they're going to say, we're comfortable with our level of disruption, we've got a good customer base, we should be fine for a while. No one's going to come and attack us, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If I can comment on that very quickly, and then we'll get Yulia, Paul, and Matt to jump in here as well. On that side, now let's go back to Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes, and DoorDash as examples, right? The first one on the market, but they didn't make enough of a splash, was Uber Eats. And what happened before Uber Eats was Uber. And what happened to Uber, we talk about disruption and markets not being ready. Many municipalities in Canada tried to shut them down, tried to add special legislation, special enactments and bylaw, et cetera, because they were not cabs, they weren't taxis. Ride sharing was not a. So we're talking disruption that happened a decade ago. Was not adequately prepared for from a governance standpoint instead. So now we're watching those coming in, but then we're also seeing. So we're going to talk about disruption as in the market shifting, because food can come to your door. It's interesting to watch some vendors, maybe to Shannon's comment, like Starbucks, that only partners with one. You can only get Starbucks delivered to your house through Uber Eats. They don't have a partnership with anybody else. It's really quite interesting to see which parties align with who. And is that going to be enough? Is it going to hurt Starbucks brand?
if if I want to jump in that, because I want to hear Shannon's take on that too. Was like, yeah, I don't think limiting yourself to one avenue is a smooth move coming out of, or as we're enduring ourselves through this pandemic, right? I feel like chasing every possible avenue you can, man, I'd be creating my own delivery service on top of the 3 I'd be signing up for, just to get word out there, right? But it's just my take.
If I may chime in, although I agree in certain industries, you have to look at the Spotify Joe Rogan philosophy. You know, he is exclusive on Spotify right now. He removed all of his podcast content from all other streaming services, but that was a 9-figure deal, right? So for him, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not the smartest. I would say it was a pretty smart deal if you make $100 million over the course of some time, right? So yeah, but you know, to third party, those programs may make sense now, but we're 24 months in. So again, those brands that have been innovative and said, you know what, we're going to take this in-house and we're going to develop something, it's time. Technically, it's too late, right? So that's where, again, like we smirk internally a bit, because when you utilize software as a service, there's so much opportunity, right? And, you know, to speak about that first comment about the first job for my daughters, they're still going to work at McDonald's because they're already in a coding class right now, and they're going to be the ones repairing all of the robots that are there, right? So until we actually have a robot to repair the robot, you know, and the AI is built, there's always going to be those opportunities, right? But that's where business owners and the industry have to be so creative, because like I've purposely somewhat set that up, and like we now are very focused on, hey girls, think of Roblox because it's the metaverse, really, and think of all the fast food outlets and how they do their actual work right now from a human movement standpoint. Just create a robot movement in that, right? And then be able to repair it. So I think that's very curious to see how that all plays out in the next couple of years, because it's not decades away. It's years at most.
Further to that, actually, I mean, in some countries, it's been here for years already. If anybody ever travels to Japan, almost their entire fast food industry is already automated, and it has been for 10 years now, maybe more. You know, you walk up to an order thing almost like you would at McDonald's here. You place your order, you pay for it. They've got 3 or 4 people in the back who cook it. Comes out on a conveyor belt, pops into a little window with your order number over it. You take it and away you go. And they've been doing it for years and years and years. And so for us to just be talking about it now, we're actually behind. And I know that there's going to be a lot of resistance to it, and people are going to be saying, oh, it can't be done. It's going to be, but the thing is that clearly you haven't been in places where it is already being done. This is not new. It's new to us, right?
Yeah, that's so true. When it hits the United States, that's when it explodes. But yes, you're saying Japan is the futuristic country that's been happening for years now, and nobody really knows about it unless you go there or experience it, right? So yeah, when it comes to companies or whatever, like industries, what's going to happen really is all that on-demand services that we already talk about, like that Netflix, food delivery, and so on, which already exist in. But my thing is, I'm wondering what's going to happen to the healthcare, since it was so damaged with this virus. So there's going to be disruption there. It will be for sure. It just like, who wants to do it, I guess, who has the guts, and you know, it's such a huge industry to disrupt. But if those people who already, I know there's people starting doing that, it just takes a little bit longer because it's so probably, I don't know, old school. So it just, yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that was going to be my next point when Mitch was talking about like industries that have been very resistant. Healthcare is one of them that has been resistant, but at the same time, not resistant. I have a number of friends who are nurses. So pre all of this stuff that we've been through the last couple of years, there was a lot of claims that, you know, we were losing doctors and nurses were being fired and everything. And that wasn't the case. What happened was we created a portal like the UK has been using for 20 freaking years, and it streamlined the processes. So a lot of nurses retired that, you know, didn't want want to retrain or what have you. A lot of them retired rather than have to face the new technology. But my one friend in particular that's in my brain right now, what she did is she saw the times coming. She said, Shannon, we have the system now that streamlines the processes to the point where what used to take 4 nurses takes 1 now. And she gets it done faster and more accurately than we did with the old system. So we're not going to stop this. So what my friend did is she said, you know what, somebody's going to have to maintain these systems. She's obviously got the medical experience. She's got the medical terminology. She knows all of that stuff. She's got a degree and she's been working as a nurse. So she actually went back to school and retrained in information technology, but specializing in medical sciences. And now she's one of the nurses that's going to get moved up the ladder in no time, because this portal is now coming in and it's starting to take over, and doctors are starting to learn how to use it, and everybody's got access to all the information in real time. And we don't need as many nurses. She's already being trained, to take over some of these information updates and those sorts of things. So she's created her own job security in that. So we've got resistance with some people saying, and some nurses even claiming that, we're purposely trying to push them out of the system. That's not necessarily the case. The case is we've automated, and some people just don't have the capacity or don't want to, or they're so close to retirement, they don't see the need to learn those new skills to retain that. So, but they tested it out in our hospitals first, and it was almost a seamless integration. Honestly, there was hardly any glitches or anything like that. All it did was make one nurse be able to do 4 nurses' jobs. Right. So, yeah, it's like a 50-50 split over there on the healthcare side.
Mm-hmm. Going once, going twice.
Sports.
Sports.
The entire sports, football, hockey, baseball, all of it. Nobody's watching. It's boring. Everybody's on their phones, or they're eating and on their phones. I see that as I think we're at the pinnacle of, or close to the pinnacle of salaries for professional athletes. I can see that coming into a decline, and as viewership wanes and more people go into metaverse, virtual world, back in, more into the gaming, where that's where it is. So I see sports industry needs a dramatic change, or they're going to be left behind.
Mm-hmm.
All in. It's, we've got that coming on the financial side, and the basis of that is blockchain and crypto. Just this week, we had Coinbase and MasterCard, NFTs, Intel to build a Bitcoin mining chip. Intel is building building chip manufacturing in Ohio. Milo to offer 100% BTC, which is Bitcoin-backed mortgages for housing. Crypto exchange buys a 268-year-old bank. So crypto is getting into retail banking. Microsoft, $70 billion Activision buy in the metaverse. Interesting in that is there's a spinoff, is the Activision Blizzard formed their first union as a major US gaming company. So even though they bought it, there's a union involved. So we're seeing a lot of it moving on the financial side. It's all money, right? Where is the money going? Where is the technology expanding? And that's having a direct impact on everything we've been talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And inflation ain't going away. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, interesting point too. I don't know if you guys have heard, but there is a proposal on the table that Reddit is actually talking about going public.
Mm-hmm. All right. Lightning round. We're down to 4 minutes left for our session today. Lightning round. Loosen it up, do some mental push-ups. What was the one disruption in the past year in your industry specifically? And what are you going to be leaning into next? In other words, what are you relying on continuing to go the way it is so that it's making your business, it's either more beneficial, it's moving faster, whatever it is, whatever the disruption was, it's, you like it and you're definitely riding this out as long as it's going to keep going that direction. Make sense? All right. Who's opening up that round? Yulia, why don't you go first?
Where do I start? So my industry is like, I'm few industries, right? My company, which is online. It's obviously like online shopping. So it's been for years and it just progressing more and more. So that's not going anywhere. It's only positive for my company, obviously. And in terms of, I'm in the adventure travel industry. So you can see some shift, like if you're talking like directly to travel agents, obviously they're suffering big time. So when it comes to shop local, so that's improving in a way. So maybe overseas people not going that much, but they're supporting and like doing staycations here. So it's like, there's pros and cons. It's just hard, like to draw that line where it's, who is doing good, who is not. Obviously, locally, yeah, in some cases we do good because of people who live in here supporting what they can support. At the same time, yeah, the industry suffered because there's no international travel almost. So that's, yeah, negative part of it. So.
Okay. Shannon, how about you?
Well, as I stated before, I used to promote liquor and recording artists and all of those things, and all of that is person to person. That's in the room stuff. I can't. So what I did is I just said, you know what, promotion, that's what I do. And I've had to promote events, not had to, I've enjoyed promoting events. I've produced my own events and that sort of thing. So I took all of the digital stuff, all the stuff that I could take online out of my business, and I moved it online, and everything that I couldn't move online, I pressed pause on. So that would be why you see the Mad Women VA behind me. So we specialize in advertising and marketing services as well as admin services, but they're all the services are delivered digitally. I still work with recording artists and that sort of thing, but now it's helping promote their music through Spotify campaigns and Apple Music campaigns and whatever streaming YouTube you can get your hands on. So yeah, it's been hard. It's been difficult helping everybody stay afloat, but hopefully we're seeing the end of it. Hopefully it's coming soon. But yeah, that's what I did. Virtual tastings, virtual parties. Worked with Tarsi, a few times, just bringing those fun party games into and connecting people, which has been great in some respects, because sometimes in some certain cases, people that live in other places of the globe that couldn't have attended that family reunion or baby shower or whatever like that, they now can, because we can Zoom everybody in. We're creating that room, but it kind of sucks at the same time too, because honestly, I'm getting so sick and tired of staring at these screens. I love the events, I love the energy, but the energy is better when you can be in the room.
All right.
I'm going next. So I think that through all of this, it's been interesting that airlines only just came up when you talk about industries that have been disrupted. But for myself, I've found quite a few benefits. You chatted about the Zoom rooms versus the in-person meetings. Well, now I position it as, you couldn't make it to drive. Well, that's okay. Here's my link. You don't have an excuse. Like, it's such a great positive that it eliminates some of those barriers, right? And although, again, I love to be in person, you know what I love? Efficiency. And this change has happened. So we need to be at you need to be a change leader, not a change manager, right? So to me, through coaching and through barter and through everything else, I've enjoyed much of this, because the biggest barrier is the change. And we've been forced to change so much that we all had the opportunity to really dissect what our lives, our schedules, our jobs, all of those things look like. So I look forward to kind of seeing how the new playing field evolves. But again, I'm like Wally, that movie poster went up on my Facebook page March 17th, 2020, like whatever the day was. And I still believe it, right? Like we get everything delivered to our little floating chair with the screen in front of us. And then on the crypto blockchain metaverse side, we're building Tron. Like watch the original Tron and watch the new one. And you're like, oh shit, we're here, right? So we're like literally the preview of all this dystopian science fiction that we've been watching for the last 40 years. But you know what? A ton of opportunity. I look forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
Manifest destiny, right? Can I go next?
Go for it.
Okay. The one thing I've noticed is with the change in people working from home, the home power consumption has doubled for everybody's household. Besides the whole fact that you now buy your own stationery and stuff too, that screens are on in the house all the time. We were looking at our power bill from last month, and because the kids had Christmas and they had an extra week off because of the pandemic, our power bill was almost twice as much as it is on a normal month because they had 3 weeks off. So they're consuming all that power all day long too. This just opens more doors for solar and renewable energies, because people are going to get really frustrated with these astronomical power bills that they're having for working at home, and nobody's nobody's recouping that cost for them. So I do see a good opportunity for environmental change, and people will want to manage their finances better just by installing solar on their homes.
Mm-hmm. Paul?
I think it's networking and relationships, especially online. It's definitely changed, but how can I create another stream of income within my own industry? Or, what's a good fit? I mean, Shannon touched on that. Hey, I got destroyed. I couldn't do any promoting, nothing. People are drinking, but they're not drinking in bars or establishments or at concerts. What the hell am I going to do? Right. So when that comes back, she'll be able to fire that back up. But what has she built in the meantime? Right. Another stream of income. And I know Shannon, and I know she's going to continue to just keep adding to that on that side. And I think that's brilliant. I really love that idea of, partnering with other companies and bringing people in. And why get paid once when you can get paid 5, 6, 7 times on that? So I see that just moving forward. I think disruption is in the back of our mind just because of all of this stuff that happened in COVID. And I think we're going forward, we're going to be mindful of anything else that might disrupt our business and our way to make income.
Mm-hmm. 1:03 p.m. Friday, January 21st, and we just cracked another 47 minutes of virtual business box lunch. Who's having fun at these, right? Who's learning a little bit, right? It's good to share, get to talk about your business a little more. And more importantly, we get a little smarter. Who's learned something today? Show of hands. We've got at least one piece of information, right? Yeah, there we go. All right. Brothers and sisters, as always, the MCC virtual business box lunch only happens because you come here to share your insights, ideas, suggestions, smarts, brains, intelligence, and of course, what you're learning sometimes the hard way in business. And for the audience that's live out there, we only do it because you keep showing up. If you keep showing up, you keep listening, you keep watching, you keep interacting. Got a couple comments today. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us. Scott, Danny, Yulia, and Shannon, I heart you. Thank you for coming out and doing this as always. My brothers from other mothers, Matt and Paul, you guys make the world go round every single week where we get to do what we do, and we love doing what we do. And from me, normally the savage of business, today that's Matt. He's on my screen right over there. He's rocking that one, right? Yeah, on Paul's screen, wherever he is from there, right? I am a 1% business needs a 1% attitude. That's me today. That's what my mantra is going into Friday. Think differently about what you're doing. Disruption comes for all of us. It happens in every single business, in every industry, and it can happen now. It can happen tomorrow. It happened yesterday. You need to learn to embrace it, understand what it is, whether it's going to be long-term or short-term, and the kind of effect that it's going to continue to create. If it upsets you, it's going to upset your competitors. If you learn to use it as an advantage or to roll with it, work with it, or find the most advantageous way to deploy said disruption, what's going to happen? You're going to wipe your competitors out. After all, in business, it's you or them, and that's it. So on behalf of the live studio audience and our participants today. Thank you for joining us. My brothers, as always, thank you for coming in here. I am Mitch Cabbage. This is the virtual business box lunch, January 21st of 2022. In the can, in a bag. We are out. We will see you next Friday, same time. We'll talk about business in the week that was, give you more ideas, suggestions, etc. And as always, keep doing what you do. And if you need help, for the love of God, reach out. We are literally right here. Get at us. We will help you do it.